Welcome to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk, a show about ancient coins from the viewpoint of a seasoned professional with nearly 30 years' experience. Here's Aaron Berk and Mike Nodelman on the Ancient Coin Podcast.
And the sound of that tone means it is time once again for the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk. I'm Mike Nodelman.
I'm Aaron Berk.
And on tonight's episode, we are going to talk about the world of auctions in ancient coins. We also have an educational segment on Brutus, as well as a pearl of wisdom that I think will be refreshing to hear. So, Aaron, what tickles your fancy in the world of auctions this week?
Well, in the continuation of what we did in episode 50, in episode 51, we're going to do a review of the last auction preview. So it's not an auction preview anymore because CNG is now over. It was yesterday, the 17th.
So let's call it an
the 18th
review.
And so auction review, yes. Yeah. So the first coin that we profiled in the episode 50 was lot 67. And that was the Carthage Shekel. And they had that one estimated at, what did they have that one episode?
They had estimated at 1,500.
1,500, and it sold for $32.50. So
it's a big elephant.
Yeah. So I mean, my impression of the auction overall was I didn't think there was many runaway prices at all. I thought the prices were kind of in line, or they were at some sold just at estimate. Ones that had very strong prices were like, anything that had a pedigree or was a plate coin in a reference book, anything that had importance.
Yeah, as they should.
So, but I didn't think that the, in some ways, I feel like it sometimes feels like the market is softening, but it's not, because everything's still selling, but it's just not, there's not these crazy prices, that we were having in the past. At least that's what it felt like to me. So the next coin was the really rare Gallan Anus Denarius, lot number 570. We talked about this coin as well. I thought it could go for as much as 15,000, but in the end, it only went for $8,000.
Just barely over the estimate.
So again, it was a really strong price for a Gallan Anus. The estimate was very strong, but it sold where it was supposed to sell. So it could have easily been a runaway price. I'm sure that CNG wanted it to be a runaway price. There were some coins that I thought could have been runaway, but then weren't. And so, but that's the thing about auctions, is that, right, it's a crapshoot, guys. I tell people who have coins in auctions like this, you don't always get the results you're looking for.
Well, auction results don't always mean the correct price for the coin.
No. I mean, look, sometimes people fall asleep,
or sometimes the room is dead, or sometimes, there's just not the right people in the room.
Right. I mean, look, and if there's an auction, like most of the European auction houses have figured out that they have to make the time reasonable for everyone, not just for their time zone. So the days of getting up at 2 and 3 in the morning are becoming less and less with a lot of the European firms.
Sure, you're happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, they still, they still start at 6 or 7, but it's a lot better than 2 or 3 in the morning. Mm-hmm. But then, like there's auction houses like Gorney and Mosh. Up until recently, I still think they start at like 3 in the morning our time. And I remember they had, I don't know, a couple of years ago, they had a really good sale of Greeks that were all plate coins in in a really great reference book, and I was getting coins reasonably cheap in the beginning because I think people were just asleep and forgot to wake up. And so,
good for you.
Well, it was for my client. It was for my client,
still.
but again, like you have to set it up and, where it makes sense. I mean, back when we used to do our Gemini sales in New York, we had to wait until Sunday after the show was over. And so we literally couldn't start the auction until 5 or 6 o'clock. And that wasn't great for the Europeans.
No,
but there was
night.
But there was nothing we could do about it. But, these days you don't really need a venue anymore to run an auction because everything's done online. And so the days of having to have a convention or show or some event in conjunction with your auction isn't necessary like it used to. So even, as you all probably know or don't know, Heritage and Stax aren't selling at the ANAs anymore. They're doing their auction previews at the show, and then they're running their auctions the following week. And that's great for a lot of the dealers who felt that the money was getting sucked out of the room at the show because the auction houses were running their auctions basically 24/7. So
I actually think that worked out well for all involved.
I agree. So, okay, so let's continue. The next lot was that Broken Carausius, lot 583.
Sorry.
No worries. There you go. They had it estimated at 1,500, and it went for underestimate. It went for 1,250 hammer. So again, broken coin, wouldn't work in a slab. It brought probably what it was supposed to bring, even though it's a unique example. Somebody obviously felt it was important enough to, even though it didn't sell, it sold for underestimate. It was still a broken coin that sold for, a good amount of money.
Yeah.
So
that's nothing to sneeze at.
No. So, guys, if you're interested in coins in a lot of these sales, do your homework, especially if you're only looking at a certain amount of lots, because I had a client just show me a couple days ago a coin that was coming up in a European firm's sale, and it had a pedigree back to early night, before way to the 30s or 40s, from what I remember. Had a nice, impressive pedigree. Wasn't a great coin, but it was still over $10,000. And the auction house missed the pedigree, even though they could have probably found it in coin archives if they looked a little bit harder.
Wow.
So, and so it, not all pedigrees are easy to find, but you have great resources in coin archives and AC search where you can literally find the last 20 plus years of auctions. And so a lot of these coins, have come back through the auction sites, probably recycled every 10 to 15 years, some less than others, some only, sell 3 or 4 years, and then they're back up onto the auction scene. So
go 40 or 50.
Right. So, so you really have to do your homework. And if you find a pedigree, because a lot of these auction houses, because look, as dealers, and we'll talk about it, it's part of my pearl of wisdom as dealers, we're trying to move as fast as we can. We're trying to do our due diligence, but mistakes do happen, but we try to limit the mistakes as much as possible. But, we're all human. And so auction houses miss pedigrees all the time. And so if the collector isn't providing the proper information, because a lot of times what happens is that when we sell coins out of a collection, we usually, if the collection's a good one, we try to save all the dealer tags and all the customer notes if possible, and we send it out with the coin. But a lot of times collectors get that stuff and they throw it away, or they don't keep it, or it gets misplaced, whatever the case might be. And so that information is lost. And so when they give it to the auction house, if they didn't do their due diligence and look, if you're dealing with 2,000 or 3,000 coins, it's hard to focus on every single coin to try to find pedigrees. So it's to the advantage of the buyers to find those pedigrees when the auction house may have missed them. And that's your advantage, and that's going to give you the possibility of getting something at a reasonable price that maybe would have brought a premium if it had that auction pedigree published. So just something to keep in mind as you're going through these sales.
The more you know.
So that was my impression of C&G overall. I think there's also a lot of amazing sales coming up in the next couple of weeks, and so NAC is late this year. They're not coming out with their sale until December. Normally it's October or the beginning of November, so they're quite late this time. And I believe NGSA is also going to have a pretty stellar sale that's going to be also in December. So a lot of good sales yet to come, and so anyway, we just have to keep on trucking along, as they say. So I thought I would stick with C&G for the, for our auction previews coming up. And instead of the printed version, we'll do an electronic version. So they have their electronic auction that's coming up next week, September 25th and 26th. My birthday's the 26th. So there you
go.
And it's 1,330 lots. And the first one I wanted to point out was lot number 34. I love this die. It's one of my favorite dies of the Leontini Sicilian periods. I love it with the large ear, and just, there's something about this style that I just love. And so you can see it's estimated at 1,500. It's probably a $4,000 coin, maybe even higher, 4,000 to 5,000, somewhere in that range, even though the grade's not high grade. And even it has that lamination on the neck, might be a little bit cheaper, but you can see it's already currently at $1,200. So it's already near the estimate anyway.
I'll tell you what. So you said you don't know what it is about this coin. This coin is just like, it's like an Athenian tetradrachm. It's just got, a lot of, it's the basoning on it. It's got a really good subject. It's clear. The images are neat. They're recognizable. It's not like I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one has a pedigree somewhere as well. Would not be surprised at all. So they don't list one, but that's the way it is. So, and that's the other thing too, like, there was a collector who gave a bunch of coins to C&G for this public sale that they just had. And they listed all of our, a bunch of coins came from Harlan Berk, and they listed the CC number and said no date of when it was acquired. And I'm sitting there in the auction and I'm looking up the CC number because I've got my database, and I'm like, oh, that came out of sale 112, lot number 3, and the date.
Right.
And so I guess if to any of you guys that bought any coins out of the C&G sale that have a CC number that came from Harlan Berk and doesn't have a pedigree beyond that, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to give you the pedigree information. So just keep that in mind if you actually bought any of those coins. So the and what's annoying is C&G could have just asked me too. If the collector didn't have it, C&G could have just sent me. It was only like 40 lots. And some of them, they did have the pedigrees, but, just send me the inventory numbers. I would have been happy to give it to them. I wasn't, crazy that the client didn't give me a chance to sell some of the coins, but he's got a big collection, and, I can't control what people do.
Right.
But I at least want to make sure that the pedigrees are fully in place.
Well, yeah, you want future collectors to be able to enjoy all the benefits of owning the coin.
Yeah, the inventory number's on there, so anybody can ask me. And I get people like years later ask me. I was just on Facebook a couple minutes before we started this thing, and somebody tagged me because somebody asked if a coin was fake and it was in our flip. So all I had to do is I logged into our network and I looked up the inventory number and I saw what sale it came out of. And it turned out it was a coin that was being studied in a series by a dealer at the time. And so, I mean, of course it was real, but I was able to give proper pricing of what it sold for, and
Right.
and give the pedigree on it as well. So because it sold in 2015, which is it's not so long ago, but it's still 9 years ago.
It's cool to be able to see that, though, to be able to have that stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And it's look, when we sell a coin from Harlan Berk, it doesn't say the current and maybe we should do that, but it's hard to list when we used to run public auctions, we would have the tags that would have the date and our logo and the lot number and all that. So it's easy to find, right?
Right.
But when you do buy or bid sales or fixed price lists, it's like you're capturing your inventory in a moment in time. And then, you're not reprinting out tickets. And because we have full information tickets on every single one of our lots, we don't put the current sale on there. And so, so the only thing you really have to go off of is the inventory number, unless somebody records when they buy it. So maybe that's on us for not having it on there. But if we list 600 coins, I don't want to have to print out all the tickets all over again.
Oh,
Kind of a pain in the neck. So, I mean, we could have separate cards for it, I guess, and slip them in there. But I don't know. Have to think about that and see what the best situation is. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent.
Reel it back.
So the next one is, we've seen these all over the place. This is lot number 51. And we're going to talk about this. I love tying in my educational into the auction preview, and that's what I'm doing here.
Yes, you do.
And so these are coins of that are typically described as coins of Koson in the mid 1st century BC. Koson supposedly was a king from Thrace, and so that may or may not have existed. And so, but it's been argued that these are actually coins that were minted by Brutus during the civil war against Mark Antony and Octavian. So, but we'll get into that. These coins are a product of the slabbing market, and that's another reason why I wanted to bring it up. These coins used to sell for $800 to $1,200. That was the most. And now, because all of these coins always come mint state, they were generally never in circulation, and so most of them get high designation in the slabs, and so they bring good money in slabs, and so it's kind of driven the raw market a bit. And so now these things are bringing $1,800 to $2,500, sometimes up to $3,000. I've seen these things bring up to almost $4,000 in some cases in slabs. And so this is a product of people buying the raw coin, putting them in slabs, and then consigning them to Heritage or selling them to telemarketers, whatever.
But basically what you're saying is that all of them are real nice like this.
They're all really nice. Yeah, I mean, you get some that are much clearer, obviously. There's different dyes that are much better carved, but generally they all look like this for the most part. And again, you get lesser dyes and whatever, but they're all mint state. Generally, most of them are going to be high grade for the most part. So, they put an estimate of 1,000. That's obviously wholesale. I expect this thing, and it's already over it's already up to $1,200.
Yeah, it's $1,200 already.
So it's still 6 days to go. So you got to figure this thing's going to end up over 2,000 by the time it's done. And then you're going to add in 22.5% on top of that. Yep. So, and then you're going to send it into the slabbing gods and hope for the best, and hope you don't get a brushed term.
Okay. So, somebody's still got a little animosity about something.
So, and then if you just want to go to the full page again, the very first one of the electronic sale, and then go down to lot 265.
Okay. So let's see, go here.
And then go down to lot 265.
You know what? Is there a go-to? There is. Yes, go to lot 265. 265. Number lock 265. Go. Boom. What's the same? Yeah, I had it.
Okay. So from 265 to 274. So if you want to flip through these, you can. They have a nice little run of Jewish coins from the Bar Kokhba Jewish War against the Romans. That's pretty interesting. So it's hard to get nice Jewish bronzes and silver these days, and so there just seem to be a little bit scarcer. And so this is a nice opportunity to buy some. So I haven't seen a group. Goldberg usually has some that comes up periodically, but I haven't seen a nice little run of these. And even it's only 10 lots. It's an opportunity to buy some Jewish war type pieces.
Yeah, these seem neat.
Yep. And most of the silver are overstruck on Roman coins. And so sometimes you'll get the undertype. In fact, C&G sold one in their print sale that you could see the head of the emperor, the Roman emperor, on the undertype, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, those are always cool.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So anyway, check out the C&G. Most of you probably already have. Maybe you haven't. But it's the e-sale. We don't usually always cover the e-sales here, but I thought it would be interesting to bring that one up. And so there we go. Yeah. I didn't really see any doofus purchases in the C&G sale or anything coming up that really kind of made my head shake too much. So well,
that's kind of good.
Yeah. No, it is good.
I mean, don't be negative all the time.
That's true.
Yes.
That's very true.
Yes.
So that's going to bring us to our educational section. And so just to give you a little bit of introduction. So back in 1999, and some of you may remember the Celator magazine. So the Celator magazine was originally, I don't know when that started, probably in the 80s. And eventually Kerry Witherstrom, who used to be at C&G, he took it over. And it was a magazine that was just on ancient coins. And then the internet kind of killed it. So unfortunately. But it was a magazine that, a lot of us dealers took out ads, wrote articles for. There's almost another, I guess we have podcasts like mine and others today to kind of fill that void, but it was kind of nice that you'd get a magazine that was just dedicated to ancient coins. So
yeah, no, it's so typical that basically the internet killed it, but it yet continues on the internet in different ways. So
right.
It's not like it's lost; it's just in a different format.
Right. So in 1999, my father and David McDonald, Professor McDonald, who's at the University of Illinois, who's written a lot of books on Thrace and Dacia and coinage and things like that, and a few others. Very good numismatist, scholar on ancient coins. So there was a hoard that came up in 1999 of the pieces on the right, the Mithridate, the 6 of Pontus types, that a lot of people catalog to 120 or 63 BC, but many, like my father, because they were found, there was a huge hoard of these that came out, and they were covered in incrustation that, and there's other things that kind of came up with it that led him and David McDonald to believe that they were actually issued for Brutus, or Brutus issued them for the civil war against Mark Antony and Octavian. It's been widely accepted that the Kosons on the left were minted for the same reason, that they were minted by Brutus to pay Thracian mercenaries, because the a lot of the Greek world were illiterate, and so they didn't know how to read, but they knew imagery. And so if you were going to pay your soldier, your soldier would get paid one of these gold coins a month to fight for you. And so they wouldn't accept Roman currency because they didn't know it. And so they issued coins that look like coins that they would understand, so that they would be accepted. And so and it's widely known that Brutus needed to build an army, and he to grow his army to fight in the civil wars, which he obviously lost, but he was using Thracian and other Greek mercenaries for that reason.
Now, I got a question. So the design of these would be similar to what they're used to seeing, but they would not have been used before, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so if you go to the next slide,
You with me?
yeah, but your screen hasn't changed.
It's got a map.
Oh, there. Now I see it. Okay. So here's the map as it was before the war started. And you can see in red is where Brutus and Cassius was. And then you can see where Octavian, Mark Antony was, and all of the different people that were, kind of fighting for the space after the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC. And you can see, what they were having to deal with. And Italy was still being run by the Senate at the time. But I just wanted to kind of show the world, and you can see where Thrace was in comparison to where Brutus was, and how easy it was to get into the Dacia and Thrace and get mercenaries out of there because they were basically right behind them. So it makes sense that that's where they would have gotten these guys. If you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So to kind of show the fact that Brutus did do this, if you look at the top, you'll see a coin that was issued for Brutus, and on the reverse in 54 BC, and on the reverse it has Brutus standing between two lectors. And if you look at the Koson, it's pretty much the same design.
Yeah, it's four guys, and this one's three guys, and
right, but it still has Brutus in between them.
Sure.
And then it says Koson, and it's believed, that Brutus had a lot of gold to be able to pay for the war. Some possibly from senators that were on his side that may have given him gold when he left Rome. Also, he had, we'll get into it, but he actually, when he was still fighting under Julius Caesar, he actually helped defeat the king in Thrace and took the gold from there. So he had a lot of gold, but oddly enough, there's not a lot of gold coins that were issued by Brutus. So, I mean, we know there's a couple coins that are, but there's very few imperial gold coins issued by Brutus. And yet he had a lot of gold. And so it makes sense that he would have been issuing these coins in gold instead of imperial types to pay the mercenaries. And so it kind of shows that this was a practice that was done when trying to raise an army and pay for them. So if you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this is kind of what my father and Dave McDonald laid out in 1999. So these are basically the points of view that were made. So the horde did have coins of Pharnaces of the second and a Sander. And those are the two coins that you see there on the right. The coins of Pharnaces, they had slight wear and were generally fine condition. The Sanders were generally mint state. and 90% of the hoard of the Lysimachus types, which are being called Mithridates, were also mint state. They also were covered in the same incrustation that these coins all had, the same incrustation, the same kind of black deposits and things like that. So it proved that they were actually all found together. And generally coins, when you're minting a hoard, you can mint it based on the wear of the coins. And so because the wear was similar to the coins of a sander, it makes more sense that they were created at the same time, which would have put it in the same time frame as Brutus in the 44 to 42 BC range. And then also the fact is that if these were coins of a sander, he never controlled the three mints. There was actually three mints that these coins come from: Tomis, Claudius, and Istris. And a sander never needed this much gold to pay any kind of army. And also the three cities that there were actually these coins come from were all coins that Brutus and Cassius had their forces were controlling. So it would make sense. And to set up a mint, all you need really is, there was lots of traveling mints at the time that traveled with the armies. And so it's not that big of a deal to set up a mint. You just need your guys, and you need a couple places, and you need gold. And he obviously had the gold. And one of the areas, whether he had it himself or he had it from senators that, were on his side at the time of the assassination, was this King Sadala II from 48 to 42 BC, who was defeated by Brutus while he was still aligned with Caesar. And the wife, I'm going to ruin her name, but it's Palmocratia.
Palmocratia
didn't want her son to be assassinated, and so she offered all of the king's fortune to Brutus, with the promise that Brutus would eventually put his son back in the throne of Thrace. So there we have an alignment, and we have, a reason, and we have the mints and everything else. So if you go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay. So these are coins of Lysimachus that were obviously much earlier. And these are what these coins are emulating. So the coin on the top left that has a square is the coins that are now being called Mithridates VI. And if you can see, it's supposed to be a deified head of Alexander wearing the Zeus Ammon horn. And then you have Athena on the reverse. And you can see that it's a very crude design. So they were made quickly, which would make sense for the war scenario. They were made in the style that a lot of Greeks would understand. And they're made also to say King Lysimachus. So again, even though they're probably made 100 years later. So that's what they were emulating or copying. If you go to the next slide.
Okay.
We have the three mints, and you can tell the mints because under in the throne of Athena, you'll see little letters. And so there's letters that represent the name of the mint, whether it's Istris, Tomis,
K-A-L, one
right,
is T-O, and one is
I-E for Istris, right. And so and we already explained why these mints were important, the fact that Brutus and Cassius were basically controlling these regions at the time, and the fact that Brutus needed a huge army to be able to fight against Mark Antony and Octavian, which they eventually did lose. So if you want to go to the last slide. So, that's our Brutus conclusion. A lot of people still sell these coins as Mithridates VI. We always do it as Brutus. I see a lot of companies that actually will list them one way or the other, or they'll maybe list them as Mithridates, but then in the notes will say another theory is that these are coins of Brutus for the Civil War. And so,
and none of them would be wrong.
No, none of them would be wrong. Exactly.
That's correct.
Exactly. So it's an interesting debate. This is why it's interesting. Some will probably say, "Oh, that's been debunked." Some people will say, "Yeah, that makes sense." But that's the beauty of ancient coins, and that's the reason why we can either agree or disagree, essentially. But that's what makes ancient coins fun.
Yes.
So, and that was the debate back in 1999. Almost 25 years later.
Yeah, and it really hasn't changed too much.
Not too much, honestly. Not too much. But
it was interesting to me to see the three different mints and how, yes, they're similar, but they're really not.
No, because you had different die cutters and different style.
It's different. Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the Lysimachus that they're actually copying. And so it's interesting how the style is, a lot of times
the other two guys standing next to me on this coin.
Right. Exactly. So that's going to bring us to our pearl of wisdom, which I kind of tapped in a little bit earlier. And that dealers make mistakes too. We're all human beings. It does happen.
This is not a well-known fact, but any dealer worth his salt will cop to it because we've all made mistakes. I mean, it's if you're dealing with enough stuff, and it's like, okay, so there's a rule in radio, and it's true for podcasting as well. If you say enough stuff, eventually you're going to say something stupid, and the problem is that it's recorded for all of time. So this is kind of that same thing, is that you handle enough coins, you handle enough stuff, you're going to make a mistake, and hopefully it's tuition, and you learn. It doesn't bankrupt you, and you move on.
Right. And I talk about the fact that I do this show because I can talk about current events, and so I'm going to bring up something that happened today that I don't think, Mike, you don't even know about it.
I was going to say, no.
And this is kind of what I'm talking about. I woke up this morning to a braid of emails from some people in Germany. Might have been one in the United States too. I don't remember. But I'm in the process of, when you're building websites and, trying to change your company, update website and make new advances and things like that. Sometimes the website doesn't work. Sometimes things happen. And so what had happened was that there was a Judea Capta Denarius that for some reason got through. It was definitely a fake. This was months and months ago. And we shouldn't have sold it, but we did. We ended up taking it back and removed it from our website. Somehow today it ended up back on our website. And even worse, ended up on MA shops because our website is duplicated. And so because the changes that our web developer made, he didn't realize it pulled in, even though we didn't have it marked web ready, it pulled some of these coins in that shouldn't have been up on the site anymore. And so, of course, the people on the internet in their couches and, in their couch coach chair think, oh, well, Berk knows it's fake and he's relisting it now, trying to sell fakes, instead of just like realizing that accidents happen. And so I call up my web guy and we're talking about it. He says, and we go over some inventory numbers and we finally figure out what the problem is. And it's based on this thing he made a change the day before. And so we quickly take everything off and do everything. While I'm doing all that work, I get a negative review on Google from somebody writing that we only sell fakes now.
That fast.
And I was like, what a jerk. you know.
Definitely
And
not
so,
a sporting thing to do.
no, and like basically said, all we do is sell fakes now. I'm like, totally lie. And, obviously I reported them to Google. I wrote you can go on. I'm not going to say the person's name. If anybody, you guys are
Oh,
interested,
that's not
you can
productive.
Google Harlan Berk and look at my response. I wasn't
Yeah.
too kind back, but, but I explained the situation. But, accidents happen, guys. I mean, those coins are in our black drawers. They're not even being offered anymore. It just happens that they got pulled into a query and we didn't know it. And so stuff happens. And so not everything is intentional. I mean, we guarantee everything we sell. Why would I try to sell fakes?
Well, here's the thing. I think that's important to notice is that you have behavior that has been for years and years and years. That doesn't change overnight. So, the fact that something happened, I would think for somebody that's been in business, 40 years, 60 years now,
60
right?
years. Yeah.
You would say, okay, I mean, there has to be something, and just
Right.
at least, and as well, you can also have people that don't like you because you're successful.
Yeah.
And will take the opportunity to take a shot at you while they can. So,
Well, I think that's mostly what it is. I think people like to take shots.
Yeah.
And I know that there are certain people, I'm not going to mention names, that are part of certain coin groups that have left coin groups and or discussion groups that were very valuable to those discussion groups because they didn't like being berated and they didn't like being abused.
right.
And so we're a community, guys. Like if any of those guys in Germany would have just asked me what the hell, I would have just told them what the problem was. I didn't even realize that situation existed.
Right.
And so instead of just like, going on there and then trying to attack us through Google and other things, like I don't understand what the rationale is for doing that. And it's not just like, it's not, my dad and I, we're successful, but we still have families. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for us, but I also have like employees that have families. And so like when people start, doing reckless things like that, and they're not just attacking me or my company, they're attacking all the people that work for us and all those families that all try to do the right thing every single day. And so, I mean, luckily I have this platform to be able to talk about it, but
Fully pulpit.
well, look, that the whole point is that dealers make mistakes. And I've talked about this before. You define yourself by how you remedy situations when they happen.
It's by how you handle the adversity in your life that your character is defined.
Right. Like if I have a client that's not happy about something and I feel like that's a reasonable reason that they're upset, I'm going to go beyond.
And sometimes even if you don't think it's reasonable.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to go beyond the call.
Sure.
What I think is reasonable to be able to make them happy.
Right.
Because I like building relationships with people. I don't like just selling them and being done. Yeah. It just doesn't, and again, like this coin in question was probably like a $300 or $400, maybe $600 coin. It's like, why am I going to ruin 60 years of business over such a small amount of money? Right. It just like makes no sense whatsoever. And so, guys, use your head. Not everything is as it seems. And that's the problem with the internet too, is that people just get off on tangents and they, they forget to be human beings. And so, I think that, anyway,
I will offer the advice that one of my teammates has done on several occasions when something goes bad. It's like Taylor Swift it. Just shake it off. That's it. Haters gonna hate, so shake it off.
That's true. But my point to all this is that look, you can go into a dealer stock and find a fake. I mean, this is why we're a community. That's why we're supposed to help each other out. Like when somebody reaches out to me that says, "Hey, Aaron, I think that's fake," I look into it. If we agree with it, I pull it down. I don't like try to sell it anyway. If it's something that's legit, and to me, that's how the community works, and that's what the community is supposed to be for. And so, if, yeah, I mean, I guess I could say the same thing, like, look, if, like I just said earlier, if C&G would have reached out to me to ask me the pedigree on the client's coins that he bought for me, I would have been more than happy to help. But I think that sometimes even dealers, they get so afraid of, like, I'm selling one of your customers' coins, and so you're going to be mad at me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be mad at you. I can't control, and I'm not mad at the person who sold the coins.
No, like they just made a choice, and that was what
they made their choice. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And so, like, but my point is like, let's make sure that what you're offering is properly pedigreed and properly published.
Right.
That's all, And so,
accuracy. That's the important part.
So this idea of like trying to hide or trying to slide past somebody, it's like it's so indicative of what human beings, I think in general, human beings are good, but there's a lot of negativity out there. And so I think that let's try to be more positive and less negative.
So there's your second pearl of wisdom.
Yeah.
Try to be positive.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that idea.
Anyway, that's our episode, Mike.
Yeah, I mean that pretty much ties it in a knot for us. So
it does.
I want to thank all the people that help make this possible, all the people that inspire us, and all the people that help create the things that make us work. And most of all, thanks to all of you who listen. We are growing and growing and growing, and we're very proud of it. And tell a friend, share our show, like, and subscribe.
Yeah.
And we'll be happy to keep doing this.
Yeah. And thanks for all the nice positive feedback you guys have given. And I'm glad that I do this. We do this.
Yes.
To help our community, and so and you're part of that community, and so I feel blessed and humbled at the same time.
Yeah, I'm like the dumb cousin that doesn't know anything, but I'm still in the family. So
absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys.
So thanks everybody, and we will talk to you next time on episode 52, the Ancient Coin Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk. We'll return with another episode soon. Meantime, you can join our private group on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and search the Groups tab for Ancient Coin Podcast Discussion Group and ask to join. There you can become part of our community, where we share and discuss ancient coins, as well as the show, the ancient coin market, auctions, or just to give our own opinions on things in order to learn together. Join Aaron and Mike again soon for the next episode of the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk.